Today, we're diving into a really incredible story from the ancient Hittite Empire, the myth of Telipinu. It's a fascinating tale that asks a huge question. What happens when the very god of nature gets angry and just walks off the job?
I mean, just think about that for a second. The god of agriculture, of fertility, of all the seasons, the one responsible for every single seed that sprouts, suddenly just vanishes. What do you think would happen to the world? Well, this ancient myth gives us a pretty terrifying answer.
So, Section 1, a world in harmony. Before everything falls apart, we've got to understand just how good things were in the beginning. At first, it's basically a paradise. The myth paints this picture of a world that's running like a perfectly oiled machine. Harvests are always plentiful, food is stored up, and there's this feeling of total order and contentment. This is the world with the god Telipinu in charge. But then, something snaps. Completely out of nowhere, the very god who keeps this perfect world running is just overcome with this incredible, furious rage. And the little details here are just brilliant. We're never told exactly why he's so mad. Maybe people neglected his rituals, who knows. But his fury is so blinding that he literally puts his shoes on the wrong feet as he storms off. It's such a small, almost comical detail, but it perfectly captures the kind of chaos he's about to unleash. And the effect? It is immediate and it is catastrophic. The entire world just flips. Before, you had harmony, life, and growth. And after he leaves, it's just chaos, barrenness, stagnation. Everything grinds to a halt. This description from the myth is honestly just chilling. It's a complete and total breakdown of the natural order. It's not just that things stop working, fires going out and smoke filling the houses. The most basic, fundamental instincts of nature get twisted and reversed. Mothers literally turn against their own children. So let's run down the list of disasters. Fire? It won't burn anymore. Plants? They won't grow. Animals and humans become completely infertile. And get this, even the other gods, sitting at their own grand feast, find that they can eat and drink as much as they want, but they never feel full. The very idea of nourishment has vanished right along with Telipinu. All right, part 3, a search in vain. The other gods are finally starting to realize just how bad this is. Their world is literally dying, so they launch this desperate, all-out search for the missing god. First, the sun god sends out his fastest messenger, the great eagle, to search the entire world. It finds nothing. Then the mighty storm god himself, Telipina's father, by the way, goes looking. But all his power and his rage are completely useless. He can't even get the gate to his own city open and just collapses from exhaustion. The most powerful gods are totally helpless. So with all the most powerful gods having failed, the world's salvation is going to have to come from somewhere, well, completely unexpected. The gods are completely stumped. They're helpless. And that's when one of the goddesses suggests that they send a tiny little messenger, a humble bee, to continue the search. As you might imagine, the idea is met with a bit of scorn. The storm god basically just laughs it off. He's furious, he's dismissive. You can almost hear him saying, "Really? This tiny bee is going to find what we great gods couldn't? This weak little creature?" To him, it's just a ridiculous last-ditch effort. And this, right here, illustrates the central theme of the story so perfectly. The eagle's might and speed were not enough. The storm god's almighty power wasn't enough. But the tiny, persistent bee, well, that turned out to be a whole different story. So, ignoring all the mockery, the goddess sends the bee. And it works. The little bee just tirelessly searches every river, every valley, and eventually finds Telipinu sleeping in a meadow. And it does what a bee does best. It stings him. That sharp little sting is what finally manages to rouse the god from his angry sleep. So, the god has been found, but believe me, the crisis is not over. Bringing him back is one thing, but calming his divine rage, that is a whole other challenge. Telipinu wakes up, and he is even angrier than before. His return is marked by destructive thunderstorms. I mean, his bad mood is a literal natural disaster. So yeah, waking him up wasn't enough. His anger had to be purified. This is where the goddess of healing and magic, Kamrushepa, steps in. Now, she doesn't use force. Instead, she performs a gentle, calming ritual. She uses things like incense to symbolically cleanse the anger and the exhaustion from his body, showing that you can't restore balance with more power. You have to use healing. And as his anger finally subsides, the world begins to heal. All those terrible consequences of his absence start to reverse, one by one. The smoke clears out, the fires burn brightly again, and most importantly, those fundamental bonds of nature are restored. Mothers once again care for their children. And to kind of seal the deal and make sure this peace lasts, a powerful symbol is placed before Telipinu, an evergreen juniper tree. And it's hung with a sheepskin bag filled with offerings, symbols of fat, grain, and wine. This represents a new, everlasting pact of abundance between the gods, humanity, and the natural world. So what does this ancient story really mean for us today? For the Hittites, it was this powerful reminder of just how delicate nature's balance is. But it leaves us with a pretty timeless question, too. It reminds us that the world is this deeply interconnected system, and that anger and neglect and disruption, whether they come from a god or from us, can have consequences that threaten to unravel everything.